host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Geczy, as primarily a fiction writer releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks. I just realized I don't have water. Releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows, when I'm not trying to make ends meet in what feels like a poverty nightmare. I wanted my brand, 99% Geek, to offer more than just my writing, pulling from my many interests and passions. I don't have much to offer in the way of talent, besides my writing, but I'm passionate on pop culture and try to keep myself as up to date on politics, science, and art as I can. Being a huge TV nerd, I run down the best shows of the week, go over all the major news headlines, people who have maybe gotten too tired to follow regular news, breaking it down and explaining it for people who might feel unable to follow along. And before anything else, I spotlight something cool and geeky for the week. Remember, you can follow along by going to patreon.com/99geek. This is Geekly Weekly number 92. We're Friday, April 2nd. And this week's highlight is Godzilla vs. Kong. Go Godzilla. Last week I highlighted the MonsterVerse, and I'm sorry for doubling down on again this week, but the movie was great. I loved it. It wasn't the deepest movie in the world, but man, was it just fun. It felt like pure joy in a 2-hour package, and I enjoyed practically every second of it. I hate how people are always criticizing the human stories. I don't think they take away from the film. In fact, I think they are essential. And I think WB's insistence on listening to fans is hurting not just the DC-verse, but this franchise as well. Because a lot of the human element was actually cut from the film. Scenes with the leader from Fringe were cut, that one guy who's always super intense. Hello, it is me from the Fringe. And are you aware that there are multiple universes, and in those multiple universes, some of them have blimps, and others don't have blimps because they realized that blimps are very dangerous and can explode. But not in the alternate universe where they love their blimps. Yes, that guy. If you've already seen Godzilla vs. Kong, you might have noticed that he was in the movie for like a split second. You're like, oh, it's that guy. And then it was just like, oh, the movie's over. That was weird. Apparently he was in the movie a lot more, and they cut out like almost every scene he was in. They just had to leave a couple scenes in because apparently he in his contract he has to appear on the credits list. Like some actors in their contract, they're contracted to be in the credits at some point. So they couldn't get him out of the credits, so they had to leave a scene in. So he's one of the main stars of the movie based on the credits, but he has nothing to do in the movie. And another person was Jessica Henwick, who I guess didn't have the same contract, so she's not in the credits, at least not in the opening credits. And she's one of my favorite actors, and apparently she was cut from the movie completely. You cannot see her anywhere in that movie. She is just gone like that, like she never existed at all. There are very clearly entire subplots that are missing, all to focus the film, and I guess it worked because people are very happy with the way the film turned out. And it does work, but all I know is that Rebecca Hall and the kid were two of my favorite parts of the movie. I thought they were great. I enjoyed them. In King of Monsters, I love Ken Watanabe. I enjoyed Millie Bobby Brown for the most part. I thought she did a good job, and I liked the storyline with her mom and Charles Dance from Game of Thrones and how they were like terrorists and shit. And I thought that was kind of cool and interesting. And I don't know, I don't think it takes away from the movies at all. I think that's dumb and silly. Um, yes. I think when done right, humans are important and necessary. And when not done right, like that annoying podcaster who followed Millie Bobby Brown around, well, I could have used him less. So, I mean, there are certain elements of the human stories that I agree are kind of annoying. Honestly, I didn't necessarily love Bryan Cranston in the first Godzilla, which is funny because he dies so early on. So it's like, if you're going to the movie wanting him, you're disappointed. And then if you're going to the movie not looking for him, then but I mean, there's not really much else to enjoy in that movie anyway. I'm not really going anywhere with that. I also could have used more moves between Kong and Godzilla. Honestly, I would have had them bro hug or something, but maybe that's why I'm not writing one of these. Apparently, Toho won't let Godzilla emote. At least that's what the director was saying on Twitter. And I suppose that puts limits on how much they can sympathize him to the audience, which is interesting. And I can kind of see how the effects of such a hardline wall uh, on their what they're allowed to do has impacted the movie. But still, it didn't stop being fun at any point and engaging. I can even see how like not being able to let Godzilla emote has impacted the other movies too. Like if you go back to Godzilla King of Monsters, one of my favorite scenes is the scene where he after Ken Watanabe blows up the nuke and regenerates Kong, not Kong, Godzilla regenerates Godzilla. And Godzilla rises from the water and like shoots out his atomic breath in there, and then he looks down, and the camera does this most ridiculous, over the top, like 70s zoom in on his eyes. Like it's some kind of like cheesy B movie, and it's so ridiculous. And by that point, I'm so engaged in the movie. It's perfect. It's just awesome. But it totally makes sense that they're not allowed to emote him, so literally all they could do was have the camera emote for him by having it zoom in on his eyes like that and be like, pum, pum, pum. And it's like, oh shit, he's pissed now. I think that's the only expression they're allowed to give Godzilla. Like, he's just angry all the time. Just always super pissed off. It's like, cool. Whatever. It works for the movie, I suppose. Um, it didn't stop being fun and engaging with a breakneck pace and some truly cheer-worthy moments. There's so many spelling mistakes in this, but oh well. Everyone should check it out, is what I'm saying. What do you do for more though? If you've already watched the movie and you're sitting here being like, yes, I know it's great, awesome. I love King Kong. I love Godzilla. I want more. We're gonna get more Godzilla awesomeness. I want to see him fighting with other monsters and shit. Um, you don't have a lot of choices, unfortunately. Yeah, started by saying you have two directions you can take, and really there's three, and one of them is be patient. Um, you can, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to be patient, just wait for years for them to make the next movie in the franchise. You can always go back and explore the original movies, like the black and white original and all the 50 or whatever movies that followed. They are cheesy and silly and might just scratch that itch. I certainly want to do that at some point. I haven't gotten around to doing it yet. I wouldn't be able to tell you um, what order to do them in or whatever. All I know is start with the first one. Alternatively, you could try the comics released by IDW. I remember those as being quite fantastic. And the first things to really draw me into the world, like I mean, I've seen like scenes from the cheesy movies back in the day, and would be like, oh yeah, I'm aware of it, but I never really cared about it at all. And then I read the comics, and that was the first time I kind of was like, okay, I can kind of get the why people are into this kind of universe. And then these movies come out, and I'm like, okay, they're fun. At least I enjoy things that are fun, and silly and over the top. And yeah, if it is fun, then why not give it a try? Seriously, if it's people who are listening to this who haven't like are just like, nah, Godzilla is not my thing. Sounds stupid. Just give it a chance. Whatever. Like it's hours of your life that you're gonna waste away hiding from the pandemic anyway. So you might as well watch some Godzilla movies and cheer for all the people who die horribly in the mayhem, because at least they won't have to suffer through this horrible coronavirus pandemic and everything that's going to follow the tyranny of the alt-right movement and the slow destruction of our world climates. And those people who died to Godzilla and Kong, they're being freed. They're being saved by these titans, and they get to go on to a better world. And I'm sure in that universe they have heaven, so it's fine. I mean, there's God, so you'd think there'd be some kind of heaven too, right? So it's fine. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to be sad for those people. Be happy for them, and just enjoy the mayhem. Go Godzilla. It deserves 2 weeks of recognition. Moving on from there before I scare anyone else away. The Geekly Weekly TV rankings. Here we go, where we're ranking all the shows I watch so you can know how best to use your TV watching time. That is to say that, say you only know you have 6 hours to watch TV a week, at least you can look at this, look at whatever the top 6 shows are and be like, okay, maybe I should check those out. That's why I rank them this way. Starting at the bottom of the list with The Walking Dead at number 12. That's right, we have 12 shows this week. The Walking Dead gets 2 stars this week for mostly boring me out of my mind. I was pretty bored last week too, so this show loves to bore me. For so long watching this show, I wish shit would stop always going wrong for them. The characters on the show, I mean. I wanted to see what it would feel like if they would actually settle down and chill out and build something and, something that lasts. Now I understand why they never let that happen until now, because they were scared the show would turn into this. I honestly think that if you were to count this as its own season since it returned from the break, this is easily the worst season of the show so far. It is just so boring. The problem is they keep focusing on characters I couldn't give a shit about. I don't care about Aaron or Gabriel or Carol or Daryl or even Princess and Ezekiel. I couldn't care less about any of these people. I care about Judith, I care about Lydia, and honestly, that's really about it. They've killed off just about everyone else I care about, and this whole season couldn't be further from those characters. I enjoy when Negan is on screen, but we haven't even had any of him. I care when we're focused on the overall state of the town and the politics and all the world building, but what I don't care about is if Carol is gonna get to make her soup, or if Daryl misses her or not. I just don't care. And focusing a whole episode on that was enough to put me to sleep. Kind of like my podcast is probably great for putting people to sleep. Moving on from there to the number 11 slot, Saturday Night Live with 2 stars as well. But slightly higher 2 stars than The Walking Dead. I wouldn't say they were tied. I would say Saturday Night Live is slightly better. It was not a very good week for SNL. There were 2 sketches I really enjoyed, the Beyonce sketch and the song about elders getting COVID. Those actually had me laughing pretty hard, and if the whole night was as strong as those 2 sketches, then we could have had a real banger. Instead, the show started off with a completely dead-on-arrival sketch about COVID in Miami, which was weird because it was also the first sketch I think I've ever seen on SNL where the host of the episode was in the opening sketch. Usually you don't see the host until they do their monologue, but this actually had the host in the opening sketch, which is weird and different and really threw me off. And then ended up being terrible, and it was like, why did they even do that? The monologue was just kind of boring, and after 2 sketches I liked, I'd be hard-pressed to find another laugh in the rest of the show that wasn't in the weekend update. And even the weekend update felt weaker than usual. The cryptocurrency rap wasn't terrible, but it was more interesting than funny. Overall, it was just not a really good night. Moving on from there, number 10, The Goldbergs with 2.5 stars. This episode was also boring, but apparently less boring than Saturday Night Live and The Walking Dead. So there you go. And it didn't do a particularly good job of keeping my interest. I feel like I can't even really be a good judge of how good the episode was with how desperately I was looking at my phone. That's right. I was kind of like, whatever. Beverly's storyline was awful from beginning to end, though I did laugh at her getting all her friends addicted to drugs, so I guess it wasn't completely awful from beginning to end. That is totally her, but is so awful. Okay. One of my screens just went crazy. Not a screen I care about, but it's cool. And my fridge just went silent. And I'm being abducted by aliens? What's happening here? Murray and Barry's storyline was boring too and just went absolutely nowhere. Honestly, the episode is lucky that I gave it 2.5 stars because I frankly gave it half a star because I probably didn't give it enough of a chance. There might have been something more in there that I missed, but I didn't love the episode. But I got more laughs out of it than Saturday Night Live, or maybe it was just shorter. Maybe the fact it was shorter made it better. I don't know. I don't know now. All of that was earlier in the week, and it's so many days since then. Goldberg, so it's like Wednesday. Number 9 on my list, Family Guy with 3.5 stars. This wasn't a bad episode of Family Guy, even though I didn't find it very fun, which seems a misnomer. But with the focus on Lois for the entire episode, there was only so much this episode could achieve. There's a reason why storylines on this show rarely focus on Lois and Meg, and I think this episode proved it's not necessarily because they're women. Their characters aren't even bad, but they are flawed in such a way that when stories focus on those flaws, it's more uncomfortable to watch than funny. That said, there were plenty of individual moments to enjoy in this episode and many laughs to be had, and I enjoyed the through line of Lois constantly insisting she's a good person. Even as she's like killing people and hiding people away in her basement and torturing them and stuff, but she keeps repeating, I'm a good person. It was overall a strong episode despite being a little boring. And that's 3.5 stars I gave to that one for Family Guy. Moving on from there, number 8 on the list, Batwoman with 4 stars. So now we're into the actually pretty good. This was a pretty good episode of the show, though there wasn't much about it to make it stand out as a highlight of the season. That said, story gears turned and the plot moved forward with us getting introduced to Black Mask, and we got to see him buzzsaw a guy in half. That was probably the best scene of the episode, and certainly shocked me that they went through with it. But there was other stuff to enjoy. Sophie's little sister was kind of a brat, but I enjoyed her more than I didn't, and she even made me enjoy Sophie more, when Sophie is usually not a favorite of mine. I would even say Sophie and Ryan, two of my lesser favorite characters, were super strong this episode and held it up, while Alice's side plot was awful and boring, and Mary had almost nothing to do. This episode could have sucked, but instead it made me appreciate other characters that I'm used to rooting for, and that wasn't so bad. So it was a good episode, despite all my favorite characters in that episode being bad. Next on the list, The Flash at number 7. This was actually a pretty good episode of the show that rarely hits the heights of the old seasons. This also got 4.5 stars. This episode had some fun moments, good pacing, interesting character moments, even though the plotting at points was a little chunky and wonky. The nightmares were kind of boring and too long, and not everything seems to be adequately explained. Who is Nora? Why does she exist? Besides looking like Barry's mom, I didn't realize it literally was Barry's mom until more than halfway through the episode. Until then, I had no idea who she was or why she was there, and I still don't. I remember reading an article about, like, hey, for people who forgot, she's a Speed Force. It's like, no, I remember that. But I also remember the part where she died, didn't she? Wasn't it like the Speed Force died, and that was why Barry no longer has a Speed Force? I don't understand this show anymore. But yeah, oh yes, that's right. She at one point says of the new villain of the season, he's like me, and it's like, who are you? What does that mean? Like, what the fuck is going on this show? It doesn't really matter, I guess. At least this episode was fun to watch, unlike some on this list. And I enjoyed the return of the chair. That is to say, the chair that the was it the thinker or the ponderer or I don't know, the guy who thought really hard and then made a chair to think even harder, and they brought it back to use it for good, and that was fun. Moving on from there, number 6 on the list, Supergirl, with 4.5 stars for the premiere. I said strong finale, but I guess it was a finale and a premiere, actually. This was far from a perfect episode, but it was a strong finale. There was an article before the episode came out where the writers said having the break allowed them to make a stronger climax to their story, and on some level I believe this. The premiere was fast-paced with a lot of expensive special effects and some pretty high stakes. The fights were good, there were some good Lex moments, and even though there's a totally different Lex Luthor running around on Superman and Lois, but whatever. And all the heroes had a chance to come to terms with each other's failures over the past season and grow past them. It was a very strong episode, worth 5 stars were it not for the usual Supergirl wonkiness. I rolled my eyes at every scene with Brainiac, with his romance with Dreamer being restarted in about as clumsy a way as possible, more clumsy even than how they broke it to begin with, which was plenty clumsy. Dreamer wasn't as bad overall, though overall I felt the whole episode was too much technobabble. Everything that kept going wrong was just told to us in very quick exposition full of technobabble, and then the solution would be more exposition mixed with technobabble, and then a seed representation of what that technobabble might look like. It's not an effective way to tell a story. So despite being a largely entertaining hour of television, it broke nearly all the important rules when it came to writing. At least they fixed a lot of the issues of last season, and possibly set us up for a good final season of the show. That was Supergirl. Moving on from there, with Shameless at the number 5 spot, also 4 stars. Like Batwoman before it, this episode was exactly the highlight of the show, and often just felt like the plot gears continuing to turn. That said, much like last week and like Batwoman, it was still a plenty strong episode. Engaging and at points even humorous, I enjoyed how everyone is naturally splitting apart. It was subtle-ish while still feeling propelled by the finale. It's easy to see the pieces of the finale falling into place and everything slowly getting wrapped up. There wasn't a single story I didn't enjoy. Liam and Frank was endearing. Lip's day was rough, but it was fun watching him try and hide the painting for the whole day. Debbie was inconsistent but sympathetic, and I both feel bad for her and think she's too much. I loved Kevin in the South, and Carl's storyline was fine as well. Not great, but the line they ended it on was pretty great. Am I fired, he asks, and he's told, nah, it's actually really hard to be fired from the force. Yeah, no shit. Funny because it's true. Shameless, always staying relevant. That's great. Moving on from there to number 4 on the list with The Equalizer at 4.5 stars. This was a really strong episode coming back from a long break. I don't know if it's partly because it's been on break for a few months, so the formula doesn't quite feel so stale. But there was a good pace to this episode, and it had a good mix of fun and intrigue. I like the twists, I like the character, I like how they made you think it was going to end sour, and I actually was okay with that ending, but the actual ending was pretty great as well. It was just a simple and fun episode of a simple and fun show. I have no complaints besides the usual network serial bullshit, and this week it didn't feel too bad in that regard, besides a couple minor early scenes that had me rolling my eyes. So overall, I give it 4.5 stars for entertaining me, and I actually look forward to it after not being around for a while. Moving on from there to the top three, with starting at with Pennyworth, with 4.5 stars. I love this show so much. It's just so over the top and so British and so crazy and unapologetic. This episode is fun and intense, even if there were a couple moments where things slowed down a little. I loved Alfred's confrontation with his old mentor, and I loved Thomas and Martha finally talking about everything between them. I enjoyed everything with the Queen and the Prime Minister, except maybe the part at the end. And Bet was a lot of fun again this episode as well, as per usual. An all-around fantastically fun show. If you're not watching Pennyworth, give it a try. I'm telling you, I cannot overstate how entertaining and enjoyable the show is. Moving on from there to Falcon and the Winter Soldier at the number 2 spot. What? It's number 2? But then what's number 1? What could it be? You probably already know if you're watching the video of this. But starting with number 2, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 5 stars. So it was pretty great. I was wrong about my Flag Smasher theories last week. It's not just one person at all, but instead an entire squad of super soldiers. Who knew? That's quite a cool twist. Sort of like the thread in Captain America Civil War. They have a misdirect in that movie where Cap, Iron Man, and Bucky think they found a headquarters as 5 super soldiers who could cause mayhem or whatever, but then they get there and all the super soldiers are already dead. Well, now we're seeing the actualization of that threat, and it's pretty cool and a bit of a surprise. I also really enjoyed the dynamic between US Agent, his buddy, and our 2 heroes. I assumed he was going to be an outright douche, but even that was a misdirect. Turns out they even managed to sympathize him. They didn't just show us the man under the mask, they showed him doing cool things in battle too. I really liked the way he dropped his shield to save his friend. The character isn't just an outright foil, but an interesting character too. And so that was 2 huge misdirects in one episode. If there was any flaw, I felt the therapy scene was forced. Up until that scene, it hadn't seemed like they outright hated each other. Bucky literally jumped out a freaking plane for him. If anything, they seemed like squabbling brothers, so for them to suddenly hate each other's guts in that scene came out of nowhere. Also, it seemed even she had other things she should have been focusing on, the therapist, I mean. Like, why were they taking her patient out of her care? You think she would have wanted to talk about that. But no matter the flaws, the strengths overshadowed them, including the scenes in that suburb with Isaiah and the racist cop. Just another fantastic scene. Oh, and the fight scene on the trucks looked amazing, just as the scene in episode 1 in the canyons looked amazing. These action scenes are just incredible, and I love it. And easily make up for any flaws, and that was easily a 5-star week again for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I was sure it was going to be the number 1 spot. And then almost right after watching that, I watched Invincible. And that's our number 1 pick with 5 stars. The first episode of Invincible is fantastic. There's a bit of dissonance with the casual, nonchalant way it sometimes deals with powers. That is to say, he gets his powers a lot faster and with less fuss than one would expect, and things escalate fast from there. The first episode had a lot to do, even with a full hour, and I was glad at the way it was able to fit in smaller moments like with his mom. Misdirection and inconsistent tone are perhaps the show's only flaw, while at the same time being its greatest strength. That's literally where it draws most of its uniqueness from, is being very inconsistent and misdirecting constantly. Be prepared to hold on tight. That twist at the end I knew was coming, but it was still satisfying. I wanted to add something else. Perhaps I would have given it like 4.5 stars before that final scene of the first episode, but then also 2 and 3 were so great that it deserves that 5 stars. Episodes 2 and 3 continued to strong form as continued the strong form of the first episode, while the twists were more subtle and less over the top as that finale to episode 1. There were some fantastically shocking moments, and the smaller everyday drama of the show was incredibly engaging. It's also fun the subtle way the show layers in Omni-Man's malevolence. The final scene in episode 2 was a particular delight. I've already seen episode 4 as well, and that as well is also a delight. I'm not sure if Amazon intends to release episode 5 early Thursday night as well. If so, maybe I might review 4 and 5 next week and do it that way. But we shall see. It's too bad they released all 3 episodes because even though admitting that episode 1 was a little weaker than 2 and 3 in some ways, I I just hate it when people drop a lot of episodes at once. I almost was like, didn't want to bother, and then I watched the first episode, and I was hooked. I was like, more. So good. So definitely, Invincible is amazing, and if you haven't watched it yet, you should check it out. It's fun because on Twitter there was a lot of people tweeting about it, going on about how they expected it to be one thing. Like there's a lot of I saw a lot of moms, or at least middle-aged women, and yeah, mostly middle-aged women and some more jockier type dudes, all checking out the show and being like, oh, I thought it was just a cool animated superhero thing. That final scene in episode 1, holy shit, this is something completely different. Everyone was reacting to it like, oh my god, good thing I didn't watch this with my kids, or oh my god, my kids, or but I found it interesting, for instance, seeing how many people you wouldn't expect to watch an animated, the fact that these people went into it thinking it was just a simple animated show about superheroes, and they were like, that sounds like something I want to watch. It's an hour long, and it's a animated Justice League ripoffy thing, and it's just fun and silly and kind of childish. That's exactly what I'm looking for. It says a shit ton of people who clicked on this show, and then they got something so much more Game of Thrones-esque, and they were like, oh my god, this is amazing, and now they're hooked. But the fact that they were in before that twist actually surprises me, and kind of shows how superheroes have become that widespread now, and that okay now in the mainstream, that you have these normal, you have people like my mom just kind of logging on and saying, I want to watch this superhero cartoon. And that's really cool. I think that's really cool that we've gotten to a point in this society. Moving on from there, now that we've, I think, touted Invincible enough, it's amazing. You should watch it. Maybe I should have made that the highlight, but I didn't. It's the highlight because it's #1 on the list. So yeah, Invincible. Amazing. Moving on from there to Geekly predictions, while I quickly scratch my nose with a Kleenex. I don't look like I'm picking my nose. Maybe I did kind of pick my nose, but with the Kleenex, so it's totally less gross. And then swallowed. It still has swallowed some gunk too. I don't know how that just happened. That was worst case scenario as far as that was concerned. All right. It's like I pushed something in and it just went the other way. Geekly predictions. Why don't I just blow my nose like normal human being? I can confirm that didn't help at all. All right. New releases people will be talking about around the water cooler over the next week. Oh my lord. I'm dying here. All right. We're okay. We can do this. Starting at the top, Kung Fu on CW on Wednesday. It's coming out on Wednesday. It looks cool. You know me, I like stories about girls kicking ass, especially when they're Asian girls kicking ass. And this is about an Asian girl kicking ass, and I'm in. I'm totally in. This is like if you took Iron Fist and then you took the Iron Fist out of it, so it was just Colleen Wing kicking ass. It looks like what this is, and I mean, it's not Jessica Henwick, but I'll make do. Right up my alley. Can't wait. That's Kung Fu. Yes, it is vaguely, I guess, inspired by the original show with what's his name? David Carradine. Some people are pissed off that it's the normal alt-right crowd and PC losers who cry about PC bullshit. The the anti-PC babies are all losing their minds because it's a girl and they're saying it is. I saw things like it's offensive to the memory of the original and it insults the original, and it's just like, whatever, get out of here. This looks amazing and I'm gonna eat it up and that's gonna be so good. I'm gonna watch the shit out of this show. I'm gonna love every second of it. I'm telling you. It might just be #1 next week. I doubt it because Invincible is pretty damn good, but we'll see. He goes to Mars, man. He goes to Mars. I mean, I still got Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That could be even better. Who knows what's gonna happen? Can they do a better fight scene than that truck scene? Because that truck scene was crazy cool. And it's gonna have to be better if it's gonna beat Invincible. Because Invincible is pretty cool. Did I mention he goes to Mars? Moving on from there, Bird Girl. It's honestly you could just draw a line after Kung Fu because there's not a whole lot else coming out this week. But Bird Girl is coming out on Adult Swim if that's your thing. I have a vague interest in Harvey Birdman in the sense that I would probably check out those old shows and watch it sometime about him being a lawyer or something. I don't know. But that's that kind of comedy sounds interesting, and I look nostalgically at that period of time of Adult Swim, even though I don't think there's a lot of that I kind of barely know of. But I look on it fondly and would love to one day check it out. And so Bird Girl could be cool. And if you were interested in Harvey Birdman, then you might want to check out Bird Girl. It's like a spin-off continuation. And one day I'll probably check out both Harvey Birdman and then Bird Girl when I get around to it. But moving on from there, Oddworld Soulstorm is coming to PlayStation and PC on Tuesday. The Bird Girl comes to Adult Swim on Sunday, in case I didn't say that it was on Sunday. Oddworld Soulstorm, I've never played any of the Oddworld games, but that's also like they look vaguely interesting. I could vaguely be interested. They come out. This is the next game in the franchise. If you're interested in like adventure games and if you're interested in like an adventure game, like the classic LucasArts 2D adventure games, and you wanted to see that crossed with a Lemmings type game, where you're leading people to their deaths, then try Oddworld Soulstorm or try one of the earlier Oddworld games, start at the beginning or whatever. It could be good, and this new one could be good too. They usually get good reviews, so I'm sure it's not going to be bad in any case. And that comes to PlayStation PC on Tuesday. Next on the list is Star Wars Republic Commando is getting a port onto PlayStation consoles and Switch on Tuesday. I never actually played Republic Commando. I've heard good things about it in the past, that it's one of the good ones. And I might get to it at some point. I'm currently doing like a go through of the entire Star Wars universe, including books and games and movies and everything and shows. I'm trying to do it all in order chronologically. So by that logic, I'll at some point get to Star Wars Republic Commando, and when I do, I'll probably play it on the Switch or PlayStation. Who knows? And that comes out on Tuesday. So if you're interested in that, get excited for that. Moving on to there, the honorable mentions, either things that don't make the list, like continuing shows of quality, or some non-fiction content. I watched The Last Cruise this week, and it was fine. If you're really... I wouldn't even suggest it's all that worth watching. I was more concerned. It brought up an interesting point about cruise ships and how they don't pay their workers very well, and I think that was the bigger thing to me than like anything to do with the coronavirus in that movie. Just like it was insane. There was this woman who was talking about how she works 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, and she gets paid $900 a month. $900 a month. 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, 31 days of the month. And she's getting paid $900 a month. That is disgusting. I would go so far to say that is literally disgusting. And I will not support another cruise ship with all my $0. But were I ever to become rich, I would require some serious, and that is a threat that is going nowhere fast. Moving on from there, the Geekly, no, I didn't even mention what the honorable mentions were. We've got just 2 things this week in the honorable mentions. That's another episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier coming out already. And then another episode of Invincible was also out already. So check both of those out because they're amazing. And absolutely, people are going to keep talking about those shows. And that's what the honorable mentions is for stuff people are going to continue talking about, things like that. So, yeah. I don't know if they'll talk about Kung Fu, but I will. So that's cool. Moving on from there, Geekly news headlines. Let's go. We got a lot. But we got lots of time to do it this time. There's nobody coming to interrupt our fun today. So it's great that I have literally nothing to talk about in the blog. That'll be fun. Geekly news headlines. Police screamed at a 5-year-old and told him handcuffs would be his best friend. Well, that's rude. How dare they? This is a story by Emma Ackerman on Vice.com, March 26, 2021. The 5-year-old boy, surrounded by 2 Maryland police officers, was hysterical, screaming and crying so hard in his school principal's office that he was having trouble catching his breath. Then one of the cops leaned down, got in his face, and screamed at the top of her lungs, according to newly released body camera footage. When you get older, when you want to make your own decisions, you know what's going to be your best friend? A pair of handcuffs? I don't even understand the point they're trying to make there. Huh? An employee at the East Silver Spring Elementary School had apparently called the Montgomery County Department of Police for help on July 14, 2020, after the kindergartner walked off the premises of his elementary school and did not wish to return. I mean, can you blame him? People keep screaming at him to put on handcuffs. But the 2 officers who responded and located the boy later encouraged the child's mother to beat him and informed him he was bad. That was part of that, though. What the fuck? Who the hell tells a mother to beat their kid? Oh my god. Oh, I would have those people fired. Wow. I want to get to the part where she mentions, because there's a part at the bottom where she is this like, what the fuck? The school official did not step in, but okay. The child was told to sit down in the school. Okay, let me go back. In the 5-year-old's case, okay. Officer Chris Mon quickly lost patience after encountering the boy, according to the lawsuit brought by Grant. The boy, who appeared quiet at the start of the body camera footage released on Friday, started crying after he was loaded in a police car, despite his school being within walking distance. Once the officers, a child, and a school official all arrived back at the school, body camera video footage shows that Officer Holliday remarked, "That's why people need to beat their kids." The child was told to sit down in the school office. Officers remained on scene despite... Why? Because he didn't like school and was trying to run away? Like, fuck. I don't know. I think he was pretty smart for a 5-year-old kid. Pretty resourceful. Once he was picked up by Officer Chris Mon and placed in the chair, the child started screaming, and Holiday screamed back, offering 5 primal screams with the seeming purpose of terrorizing an already traumatized and upset child, attorneys wrote in the lawsuit. The school official did not step in, but later called Grant and tried to get him to talk to her on the phone. Chris Mon forced him into the chair as Grant reassured the boy, "Mommy coming, okay?" The child was sobbing so hard that he was coughing. "You're going to make yourself sick," Grant said. Then, once Grant arrived, she reassured the officers that she did not beat her child, who at that point had quieted down. They responded that she should. "We want you to beat him," Holiday can be heard saying. Like, what? Who says that? Who says that to someone? Hey, I want you to beat your child. Horrifying. Just horrifying. That was a police officer. Just more proof that police officers are full of shit. Moving on from there, looks like a article by the Associated Press about what is true and what is fake. I guess it's going through some of the false news that's being spread around, some of the rumors and propaganda and conspiracies that are being spread around, and fact checking them. And I thought that was interesting. We've gone through one of these before. I think they do them every week, and sometimes I feature them and sometimes I don't. But this one is interesting, so I'm featuring it. Starting at the top, someone claimed that the Pfizer CEO received... the claim that CEO of Pfizer refused to get a COVID-19. Apparently that is false. He did receive his vaccine. He didn't refuse it. Next claim, Vice President Kamala Harris disrespected the military when she failed to salute the military escorts boarding Air Force 2 on March 19th. The fact is that the U.S. presidents are not required to salute service members. I guess they can, and was rude-ish, but like whatever, get over it would be my thing of it. Apparently, actually, I think what was interesting about this, let me get to the part that was interesting. According to Army regulation, the president, as the commander-in-chief, is required to receive a salute, but there is no requirement that the vice president receive a salute, so he shouldn't even have to receive one. Someone's trying to suggest the vice president lacks respect or authority. Where was the part that I was interested in? Uh, Former President Barack Obama made headlines not once but twice while in office. In 2013, Obama walked past a service member as he boarded Marine One without saluting, returning a few moments later to shake the guard's hand. Oh, that's nice. A year later, he again made headlines when he saluted troops with a coffee cup in his hand as he poor people. Before Obama, critics were also not happy with former President George W. Bush, holding his dog Barney as he attempted to salute in 2001. According to historians, Ronald Reagan was the first president to regularly salute troops. Apparently, before. Okay, so that was the point I wanted to get to. Apparently, before Ronald Reagan, this wasn't even a thing. And then Ronald Reagan did it, and then presidents after him did it because they didn't want to be the first one to stop doing it. And so it's just continued to this day. And that started off with just the president, and again, has nothing to do with the vice president whatsoever. So whatever. Sure, she could have been a nicer person and saluted, but it's really not the end of the world. I'm sure out of the hundreds of times I am, if I were in her position, I was forced to salute 100 times at someone, I might forget once or twice too. I don't know. Another claim. Finally, a judge has ruled Dominion voting machines were designed to create fraud, which is just not true. I don't know where somebody heard that, but that's not even remotely true. Moving on from there, CNN displayed a banner during coverage of the mass shooting in Boulder, Colorado, saying the gunman was factually Arab but morally white. CNN banner did not say that the shooting suspect was morally white. That just never happened, I guess. Apparently there is a recording of, okay, so it was a doctored thing because somebody found a recording of the exact same time period with the actual text that says Colorado shooting suspect booked into jail today. Not what that says. They changed it. Next claim. Taco Bell is offering $60 and Walmart is offering $75. Customers who share and comment on their posts. That's... Okay, what? The point is you're not paying people. That's not a thing. There's no infrastructure for that within Facebook, as far as I know of. Well, I suppose I could just... I guess there is an infrastructure for that. It would be pretty easy. You would just go through the people who commented and be like, hey, you get a number and you get a number. It must be true then. Moving on from there, upwards of 100. I mean, who cares? Seriously, who cares? Upwards of 100 people dead in Myanmar in deadliest day since coup. This is what people should be caring about. This people aren't talking about enough. I just watched a Vice News episode last night that went into some of the violence in Myanmar, and it's insane. So let's go into this story. This is a story by the Associated Press on March 27th, 2021. As Myanmar's military celebrated the annual Armed Forces Day holiday with a parade Saturday in the country's capital, soldiers and police elsewhere killed scores of people while suppressing protests in the deadliest bloodletting since last month's coup. For those that don't remember, I believe the military took over the country from their leader Aung San Suu Kyi, I think is her name, something like that. She was an elderly woman and is now in hiding, I think, in another country, or possibly still in her own country. I'm not sure on that one. The online news site Myanmar Now reported late Saturday that the death toll had reached 114 people. A count issued by an independent researcher in Yangon, who has been compiling near real-time death tolls, put the total at 107, spread over more than 24 cities and towns. That's more than the previous high on March 14th, which ranged from 74 to 90. The killings quickly drew international condemnation, including a joint statement from the defense chiefs of 12 countries. A professional military follows international standards for conduct and is responsible for protecting, not harming, the people it serves, said the statement. We urge the Myanmar Armed Forces to cease violence and work to restore respect and credibility with the people of Myanmar that it has lost through its actions. Thanks. The European Union's delegation to Myanmar said that the 76th Myanmar Armed Forces Day will stay engraved as a day of terror and dishonor. The killing of unarmed civilians, including children, are indefensible acts, it added. U.S. Ambassador Thomas Vada, in a statement, said security forces are murdering unarmed civilians. These are not the actions of professional military or police force, he wrote. Well, besides our police force, apparently. Myanmar's people have spoken clearly. They do not want to live under military rule. Who would? The death toll in Myanmar has been steadily rising as authorities grow more forceful in suppressing opposition to the February 1st coup that ousted the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. That was close. The coup reversed years of progress towards democracy after 5 decades of military rule. Figures collected by the Yangon researcher, who asked not to be named for his security, have generally tallied with the accounts issued at the end of each day by the Assistant Association of Political Prisoners, which documents deaths and arrests and is widely seen as a definitive source. The Associated Press is unable to independently confirm the death tolls, so they can only go off of the figures collected by this Yangon researcher with the assistance tallied by the Assistant Association of Political Prisoners, a bunch of different groups focused on this sort of thing. Up through Friday, the association had verified 328 deaths in the post-coup crackdown. Wow, that's a lot. Isn't that more than what they said at the top? Yeah, 114. Oh, that was in one day. Wow. So what was it? 328, did it say? This is a long article. I don't know where we were. Yes. 328 deaths in the post-coup crackdown. Junta Chief Senior General Min Aung Hlaing did not directly refer to the protest movement when he gave his nationally televised Armed Forces Day speech before thousands of soldiers in Naypyidaw. He referred only to terrorism, which can be harmful to state tranquility and social security, and called it unacceptable. This year's event was seen as a flashpoint for violence, with demonstrators threatening to double down on their public opposition to the coup with more and bigger demonstrations. The protesters refer to the holiday by its original name, Resistance Day, which marks the beginning of a revolt against Japanese occupation in World War II. Interesting. State television MRTV on Friday night showed an announcement urging young people who have been at the forefront of the protests and prominent among the casualties to learn a lesson from those killed during the demonstrations about the danger of being shot in the head or back. What? The warning was widely taken as a threat. No shit! Because a great number of the fatalities among protesters have come from being shot in the head, suggesting they have been targeted for death. No shit. The announcement suggested that some young people were taking part in protesting as if it was a game and urged their parents and friends to talk them out of participating. Jesus Christ. In recent days, the junta has portrayed the demonstrators as the ones perpetrating violence for their sporadic use of Molotov cocktails. On Saturday, some protesters in Yangon were seen carrying bows and arrows. In contrast, security forces have used live ammunition for weeks against what have still been overwhelmingly unarmed and peaceful crowds. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, why isn't the UN moving in? The US Embassy said shots were fired Saturday at its cultural center in Yangon, though no one was injured. The military government does not issue regular casualty counts, and when it has released figures, totals have been a fraction of what independent parties such as the UN have reported. It has said it uses force. Its use of force has been justified to stop what it has called rioting. In his speech Saturday, Min Aung Hlaing used the occasion to try to justify the overthrow of Suu Kyi's government, accusing it of failing to investigate irregularities in last November's general election and repeating that his government would hold a free and fair election and hand over power afterwards. The military has claimed there were irregularities in voting rolls for the last election, which Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party won in a landslide. The junta detained Suu Kyi on the day it took power and continues to hold her, so she's not in hiding. She's being held on minor criminal charges while investigating allegations of corruption against her that her supporters dismiss as politically motivated. Phil Robertson, Deputy Asia Director of New York-based Human Rights Watch, said Saturday's events showed that the military, known in Myanmar as the Tatmadaw, should be prosecuted in international courts of law. Yeah, why not take everyone at the top of this, all the officials, like all the senior members of the military, and throw them in prison? And then what? When the people who led this whole military coup are in prison, then what? Goodbye loyalty, as far as I'm concerned. This is a day of suffering and mourning for the Burmese people who have paid for the Tatmadaw's arrogance and greed with their lives, time and time again. Very important to cover all of that. Because I don't think people are talking about it enough. It's happening far, far away, so we don't have to worry about it. But I mean, it's real people that are getting hurt. Moving on from there, a MAGA supporter pulled a gun on Antifa at a violent protest in Oregon. So in case you thought all of that stuff is over with, nope, it's still going on. This is a story by Vice.com by Tess Owen on March 29th, 2021. A small group of Proud Boys and MAGA supporters faced off with anti-fascists in Salem, Oregon on Sunday, and things got violent pretty quick. Black-clad counter-protesters attacked MAGA supporters in their trucks with rocks, which... that too is an assault. Like, rocks are deadly weapons of a sort. Not as deadly as a gun, say, mind. Then someone pulled a gun and was quickly arrested by police. The scenes that unfolded in Salem have become an increasingly familiar sight as far-right protesters have targeted Oregon's state capital on several occasions in recent months, leading to showdowns with riot police and counter-protesters. But even before the day was over, the far-right disinformation machine was hard at work amplifying false or exaggerated narratives surrounding Antifa. Armed Antifa insurrectionists, armed as in with rocks, I guess is what they meant, attempted to overthrow the Oregon state capitol today, far-right media personality Jack Posobiec declared on Twitter in a since-deleted post. Antifa armed rioters descend on Oregon state capitol in Salem, Fox News wrote in their headline, going on to describe the crowd as about 200 strong and heavily armed, again, with rocks. Antifa strikes again, wrote Right Side Broadcasting Network, a fringe right-wing site. Asked by Vice News whether he would characterize the events in Salem as an attempted insurrection by Antifa, Lieutenant Trevin Upks from Salem Police Department replied no. Okay, cool. Thank you. About 100 counter-protesters from a coalition of anti-fascist groups under the umbrella of Fascist Free 503. Wow. So more like Fascist Free 100, but okay. Gathered in response to a planned Freedom America First rally, which was expected to draw a caravan of MAGA protesters and Proud Boys to Salem. Ahead of the event, anti-fascists had been circulating screenshots of far-right Telegram chats that showed Trump supporters discussing what sorts of weapons they were bringing, including bear spray, pellet guns, knives, and smoke grenades. According to Salem police, many of the anti-fascist protesters had also arrived armed with an assortment of firearms, bats, skateboards, umbrellas, shields, and gas masks. Some of those things were not like the others, and attempted to drive Trump supporters away by throwing rocks and paint and their cars. They were throwing their cars. That would be really impressive. In one particularly heated interaction captured by journalist Marina Ray. Okay, so the Trump people are bringing bear spray, pellet guns, knives, and smoke grenades. The anti-fascists arrived armed. So, very confusing. So they were both moderately armed. In one particularly heated interaction captured by journalist Marina Ray, anti-fascists maced a Trump supporter's truck and broke the windows. The driver got out, unholstered his handgun, pointed it at protesters, and chambered a round before he was wrestled to the ground by police. Okay, let's watch this. So this is the guy that paused. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, those are Antifa guys, I guess. They spray painted his car's windshield. I bet he's gonna be pretty pissed about that. Okay, so the car got spray painted, he's pissed. Okay, people are throwing rocks in his car, I guess. And other things. It looks like candy, food. People are throwing food. He's pissed, he's drawn a gun. And everyone just ran away. I shouldn't be laughing. You fucked up, you fucked up. Somebody was yelling. Oh, no, he's putting the gun in the truck. Is that a police officer? Fuck. Okay, honestly, that looks like a shit show. Quite honestly. And I mean, on some level, I don't think you can't be like, I'm trying to think of how to put this. If you're attacking a guy and he unholsters a gun, you can't completely say that, well, I was just minding my own business and completely innocent in this situation. I mean, he still took it too far, but they are egging him on. So, I mean, it's not completely take that away from them. Another truck driver accelerated through the crowd of anti-fascists, nearly hitting them. That sounds horrifying. And that's never, there is no excuse. If you see a group of people, you do not accelerate to try and hit them. It's horrifying. Fucking, and then he just drives away super fast, because, I mean, fuck you. That's like a crime. Once riot police dispersed the crowd away from the Capitol grounds, they began to move around the various streets in the vicinity, which resulted in more altercations between opposing sides, Salem police said. Salem is poised to become another West Coast hotspot of political violence, while Portland has become notorious for violent clashes between leftists and Proud Boys and riots against police brutality. The state capital has on several occasions been the backdrop for angry violent protests from the far right. And for the record, I do approve of the Antifa saying punch Nazi in the face. So, I mean, perhaps these people deserved having rocks thrown at them. Perhaps I would have thrown a rock in their case. I just feel like you can't do violence on someone and then be angry when they do violence back and be like, well, how dare they? Because at that point, they're just meeting you at your level. The most notable example was in late December when armed MAGA protesters angered over, I don't know what that's about, but you can continue reading about this, I suppose. Salem is poised to become another West Coast hotspot of political violence, while Portland has become notorious for violent clashes between leftists and Proud Boys and riots against police brutality. The state capital has on several occasions been the backdrop for angry, violent protests from the far right. The most notable example was in late December when armed MAGA protesters, angered over COVID-19 restrictions and the outcome of the presidential election, overwhelmed police and stormed Oregon's capital. Despite the fact that many in the crowd had brought Blue Lives Matter or back the blue flags, they quickly turned on police when they found them blocking the entry to the building, which in many ways foreshadowed the deadly events at the U.S. Capitol just weeks later. 10 standoffs in Salem between police, far-right protesters, including Proud Boys and counter-protesters, also ensued on New Year's Day. And on January 6th, as an insurrectionist mob stormed the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., Trump supporters and the far-right converged at an Oregon state capitol. The event began peacefully with moments of silence for people who had been injured or arrested in D.C., but it later spiraled into chaos and violence as the group clashed with police and counter-protesters. Salem's police's Lieutenant Upkeys, told Vice News they're worried about the uptick in clashes between opposing groups. What we are concerned about is the Capitol building draws a lot of protesters, but this protester versus counter-protester mentality is taking place. So whenever you're a group with opposing views or opinions, the other feels it's necessary to oppose that. Then we get sparks of danger at these demonstrations, as we've seen throughout 2020. That person goes on to say that it's difficult to label one side as being more responsible for violence than the other. In the case of Sunday's events, he simply noted that when the Freedom Rally protesters arrived, their vehicles were attacked by counter-demonstrators who call themselves anti-fascists. And I mean, I that is what we were seeing. So, I mean, that's not a lie. Antifa Proud Boy tensions also reportedly flared over the weekend at an Easter egg hunt in the town of Schaumburg, Illinois, 30 miles from Chicago. That said, good on them for continuing. As far as I'm concerned, good on them for continuing to push back against these morons. I'm not saying they deserve to get shot or anything. I'm just saying when you go into a battle and invoke violence, violence happens. That's tit for tat, I guess, and an argument for why maybe people shouldn't fight violence with violence. I don't know. What I do know is that you can clearly see how reading the article allows you to see more sides of an article of what's going on. Like we, to a point, we were able to understand their side of view by reading into the details of the article. I read something earlier in the week that I want to bring up. We're kind of pausing the news headlines for a sec and going into back in entertainment news. Kind of, there's some more entertainment news later. But at one point, the Snyder people have been going crazy all week. I don't know if you've been keeping up with how crazy this Restore the Snyderverse fanatics are being. But they at one point they pointed to an article about review bombing Godzilla versus Kong, being like, all the Snyder people are review bombing to try and get people to try and get revenge against WB. And the Snyder folks looked at the article and were like, hey, see, fake news. There's only like 25 people doing the review bombing. Some of us are trying to actually do the opposite of review bombing, review it well. So like, leave us alone. Fake news, always fake news is proof of the fake news. Like the fake news fakerton. But like, I read the article, and if you read the article literally states in the article that there's about 25 people that are doing these review bombings, and from what we've seen, there are other fans of Snyder who are coming in and trying to reverse it, and there are some that are saying that it's wrong to review bomb, and it goes against what they stand for. And it's like everything that, but of course, these people who complain about fake news, fakey fakers, and fakey, all they look at is the headlines, and they never actually, they don't understand the concept of context being king. And that's everything in all situations. Like, understanding context is so important. Just getting the like quick pops or whatever can take away so much from the realities of many situations. And sometimes it's better to dive deep and truly understand a thing before you go shooting off your mouth. So, I mean, it just goes to show here again, that's all I'm saying, is that once more, you got one thing from the headline, and then you go into the article and you see that it's a more complex story, and that the world is often more complex. It's worth digging into that. Moving on from there, Chinese officials vote unanimously to gut Hong Kong's free elections. Fuck these people. Let's go into it. This is a story by Viola Zhu for Vice.com on March 30th, 2021. China's leaders have approved a radical overhaul of Hong Kong's elections, closing one of the last official avenues for political opposition in the semi-autonomous Chinese territory. The ruling by 167 officials empowers a secretive committee controlled by Beijing to screen all candidates, ostensibly for national security reasons, before they can run in the city's legislative elections. The Committee for Safeguarding National Security, led by Hong Kong's pro-Beijing leader Carrie Lam and a top Chinese official, will work with the local police and authorities to determine whether a candidate is eligible for office. That sounds horrible. Any decision to bar someone from running will not be open to challenges in court, according to the plan endorsed on Tuesday. This sounds like hell. The move effectively gutted the last meaningful and free elections in the former British colony. Currently, half of the city's legislature, the Legislative Council, is directly elected by Hong Kong's voters. These elections have been a barometer of support for Beijing's policy in Hong Kong since the city returned to Chinese rule in 1997 under an arrangement known as One Country, Two Systems. Basically, at one point, Britain ruled over Hong Kong and controlled it as a colony of Britain. And now China controls Hong Kong. They gave it to China with the implication, I don't know if it's going to mention this in this article, but they gave it to China with the implication that they would leave it as a democracy and they wouldn't change the way it's governed. And that lasted for about a decade before China was like, yeah, fuck that shit, and started their own shit instead. The city's pro-democracy opposition had enjoyed a slight but consistent majority over pro-Beijing lawmakers and looked set to expand its lead in upcoming elections. But a new vetting mechanism, along with a slew of other revisions of the electoral system, will ensure that Beijing loyalists have full control over elections in Hong Kong. Details of the new system were released to the Hong Kong public only after they were written to the city's mini-constitution, the Basic Law, on Tuesday morning. The changes take effect on Wednesday. In a video released by Chinese state media, somebody should get a hold of that constitution and just set it on fire then. This is my suggestion. In a video released by Chinese state media, 167 leaders of China's rubber-stamped national parliament unanimously pressed the approve button to pass the constitutional changes and clapped. What a bunch of monkeys and sheep. China's ruling Communist Party has launched a mass crackdown on the city's pro-democracy activists after a year of fiery protests that led to violent clashes between protesters and police. Beijing has since imposed an expansive national security law for Hong Kong, which allowed the police to arrest the bulk of the city's opposition leaders. Horrifying. The changes will likely spell the end of the Hong Kong Legislative Council's role in challenging government policies as opposition politicians are kept out of the plaza. Once more, here's another situation of people having their rights taken away, of people having their lives taken away. And the UN continues to do absolutely nothing. It's really fun to see. The changes will likely spell the end. I already read that. Under the new election rules, a 1,500-member election committee filled by mostly pro-Beijing politicians and industry representatives will nominate legislative candidates and directly choose 40 of the 90 lawmakers. 117 seats for elected district councillors in the election committee, which were likely to be taken by opposition activists following their landslide victory in the middle of the 2019 protest movement, have been scrapped. In the Legislative Council, the share of lawmakers directly elected through geographical constituencies, seats that used to be filled by mostly pro-democracy politicians, has been reduced from 50% to 22%. On Tuesday afternoon, Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam defended the changes as necessary to prevent opposition leaders from destroying Hong Kong. She said people from the pro-democracy camp would still be able to get nominations as long as they were patriots. What is the best system of democracy, Lam said. I am one of those who will not subscribe to the view that there is one single model of democracy. Apparently, their favorite model of democracy is a non-democracy. Hong Kong's democracy advocates in some Western governments have accused Beijing of going back on its 1997 promise of granting Hong Kong a wide range of freedoms and a high degree of autonomy for 50 years. So they promised 50 years. They gave it about a decade. Lo Kin-hei, the chairman of the opposition Democratic Party, told reporters on Tuesday that under the new electoral system, Hong Kong's governance bodies would have fewer voices that could represent public opinions. The major problem that we are facing is not just about housing, not just about whether or not young people have social mobility, it is about whether the system can actually reflect what Hong Kong people think. This change makes the problem worse. In a statement, Beijing's powerful liaison office in Hong Kong, whose director will help vet candidates, said the electoral overhaul marked a new stage in the development of democracy. After getting out of the mire of political disputes, Hong Kong will better tackle deep-rooted economic and livelihood problems and better integrate into the big picture national development, the statement said. Fuck you. Moving on from there. We still have a lot of stories to do. Not over yet. Oh my god, this one. This is gonna be a hard one. I mean, a lot of these are hard, but... Elderly man tortured with horrifying array of weaponry after grinder catfishing. The assailant claims he was in the throes of a drug frenzy when he tortured his victim with a taser, secateurs, and an electric drill. I think secateurs are like, those like, they're kind of like pliers, I think. Let's look it up. Because why not better understand the tools? Yeah, oh my god, that's horrifying. Fuck that shit. Fuck it. Oh, and my favorite, a syringe containing AIDS. And a knife. All of these were used on an elderly man in Australia last year after he was catfished. So this happened last year. I didn't even catch that part. After he was catfished on Grindr and lured into the home of a drug-fueled assailant. An Adelaide court this week heard the grueling details, so the details weren't available until now, of how 21-year-old Charlie Michael Edward Kerr tortured his victim, who was naked, handcuffed and blindfolded at the time with a horrifying array of weaponry. Kerr admitted to setting up a fake Grindr dating profile and meeting the elderly man behind a supermarket in Murray Bridge in rural South Australia in February last year. He coaxed his victim back to his brother's house at about 2:45 a.m., whereupon he blindfolded, bound, and tortured him, probing him with a taser and electric drill, holding the flame of the lighter to his head, placing his fingers between the blades of the secateurs, slicing his arm with a knife, injecting the syringe into the man's right arm while telling him it contained the AIDS virus. What the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with people? All of this while his brother Brett, 36 at the time, demanded passcodes for the man's phone so that they could access his bank account. Did I mention that this is a story by Gavin Butler on Vice.com on March 30th, 2021? Did I mention that? The defendant, Charlie Clare, sought to make monetary gain by detaining and torturing an elderly man in quite a horrid fashion, and this occurred over a sustained period of time. He, the victim, was told his body would be dumped where it would never be found. The victim himself experienced the most sustained and intense period of physical pain he has ever endured. No shit. What the fuck? Joel Horskins, the lawyer, told the court that Kerr was in a drug frenzy at the time. He had spent at least $10,000 on methamphetamines. How do you spend $10,000 on methamphetamines? What? He didn't plan to assault the man in the manner that he did, but he did have in mind to perhaps teach him a lesson if it was the person he believed had assaulted his friend's brother. So he thought this dude was a random dude that assaulted his friend's brother, even though it wasn't. I don't know. That's fucked. That's a fucked up story. Moving on from there. Chinese man jumps into steel furnace after losing money in the stock market. This is a story by Viola Zhu on March 31st, 2021. A steel factory worker in China jumped into a blast furnace and died after losing $9,100 in stock trading, his employer said. I believe this article's been modified. They didn't give the number before. The 33-year-old worker, Wang Long, had been working at the state. Did I mention this is? Yes, I mentioned who it was. Vice.com and all that, yes. Working at the state-owned Batu Steel in Inner Mongolia for more than a decade before he went missing during his night shift on March 24th. This is horrifying. In surveillance footage posted on Chinese social media, Wang is shown throwing his helmet and gloves into the pot of molten metals and minerals before jumping into the pot himself. Can you imagine? Who would do that? Fuck. And how long do you think it took before he realized it was a really bad idea? Do you think long enough for him to try and get out again? Yeah. Yeah. Temperatures inside the furnace can reach above 1,500 degrees Celsius. The worker's death has prompted shock and grief on social media this week. No shit. In a Tuesday statement, Batao Steel said Wang was a longtime stock and futures investor and his death might be related to his trade losses. Wang lost more than 60,000 yuan, $9,100, from his investments on the day of his death, the company said. It's suspected that his suicide was related to the large amounts of losses that he could not repay, and that he could not repay his heavy debts, the statement said. That's fucked up. I think I mentioned something on Twitter where I suggested that this article and that last article are somewhat connected in the sense that in both stories you see someone who's trying to, in the one sense, okay, you've got the one sense, the one person is the old man was on Grindr when he was taken. He was seeking out just a connection, a sexual connection. He just wanted something, you know, that other people have and that he doesn't have, and he wanted it, and he reached out for it, and what he got instead was hurt, suffering. And then you've got this man who all he wants is to be rich. He just wants money, and he was told by society and everyone, hey, just do this thing. You can do this thing. You can make shit tons of money, and this is the secret to being rich. And it's really simple and secret and easy. And you know these quick and easy solutions, you know, to money or to sex or to relationships, to these quick and easy solutions, more times than not, lead to people getting hurt and lead to suffering and pain. And I mean, I can relate to both these people because I mean, I feel in both senses. I feel what they're going through and what they were going through that led them to this point, and it's horrifying and it's awful and it sucks that this happens again and again, and I hate it. I hate that society tells us things that put us in danger and compel us to do horrible things, and there is no simple easy solution, and when you try it just opens you up to get hurt, and then you'll see the people who made it, you know, like they took those simple easy solutions and it worked for them, and they'll be like, see, everyone can do it and they can be just like me, but the problem is they don't realize that there's 10 people where they stood who failed and died for it and don't get to tell their side of the story. It's so frustrating because so many people are being hurt and nothing changes. Moving on from there to something that's a little more exciting. A couple easier to swallow stories, starting with GTA 6 multi-city setting rumors explained. Screen Rant explains them. Danny Payez explains them. This happened 2 days ago. Grand Theft Auto 6 has long been rumored to be a generational leap in Rockstar Games' open world resume. Years of online chatter have suggested that the eventual release might take players back to Vice City, but the company has yet to say anything about where its next debaucherous criminal adventure could take place. Recently, a new rumor claiming to shed light on GTA 6's release date also included unconfirmed details about the upcoming game's location, one which would be the most ambitious sandbox title ever to be released if they prove accurate. There's no concrete information regarding when or where GTA 6 could take place at the moment. Still, the 2019 Project America's rumors that went viral and ignited years of speculation were responsible for nearly all of the theories claiming that GTA 6 would be set in Vice City. Now, an alleged Rockstar insider has come out of the woodwork claiming that these long-circulated rumors are true. This information stems from the anonymous message board 4chan, which yuck, where it was posted on March 29th and spread to other forums like Imgur and Reddit. The poster attempts to add credibility to his statements by claiming he has worked with Rockstar in coordinating capacity, but doesn't provide any way to verify this employment in history. Similar to the Project America's rumors, the poster claimed that GTA 6 would take place in several cities, and they alleged to reveal how many areas to expect. GTA 6 could allegedly place in a total of 5 contiguous cities across 5 states, which will supposedly include Liberty City and a 6th metropolis that isn't adjacent to the others. The original Project America's post claimed that the game would be set in Rockstar's fictional rendition of the United States, in Latin America, or the Caribbean, which could be the mysterious 6th city mentioned in the latest rumor. Plus, even with all of these new potential locations, fans might not need to say goodbye to GTA 5's Los Santos. The post goes on to claim that GTA 5's current map is included in this new world, Expand and Enhance. That suggests that Los Santos could be included in one of the 5 cities mentioned in the post and aligns with Rockstar's plans for GTA Online. The online mode of GTA 5 has proven to be a cash cow for the company, and it will be ported to next-generation consoles, which signals that Rockstar has no intent to replace it anytime soon. Adding new cities to GTA Online and selling a single-player campaign as a standalone title could allow the company to retain its massive player base and introduce new content. Rockstar has reportedly looked into devising alternative ways to release its title to reduce the crunch required of its developers. The company has been considering piecemeal launches of big games, like how World of Warcraft expansions are released biennially, to give staffers more manageable deadlines than one massive 1 years down the line. This leak is completely unconfirmed, but the future is still murky for Grand Theft Auto 6, but the release strategy it described might not be so far-fetched after all. Interesting. I like the idea of a multi-city world. I am less interested in the idea of them continuing forward with their GTA Online, simply because I feel like too many people now at this point have hacked and gotten trillions of dollars of funds and have all the things. Meanwhile, people like me are with nothing but an apartment, like a couple cars. And just like, man, I wish I could be you guys having all the fun. So with GTA 6, if they started over, then I might be able to enjoy it in the fun. But whatever. What do I know? Scientists directly manipulated antimatter with a laser in mind-blowing first. That's a story on Vice.com by Becky Ferreira, March 31st, 2021. One of the greatest unsolved mysteries of our universe is why normal matter, the stuff that makes up stars, planets, and our bodies, is so much more abundant than antimatter, an exotic material made up of antiparticles that hold the opposite charge of regular particles. Now scientists have announced that they have manipulated antimatter for the very first time using a specialized laser, a major breakthrough that could shed light on this open question among many others. The novel technique successfully slowed anti-hydrogen particles down by cooling them to temperatures near absolute zero, an innovation that has far-reaching implications for antimatter studies, according to a paper published on Wednesday in Nature. The ability to analyze and manipulate antimatter will allow scientists to test fundamental hypotheses about the makeup of reality. For example, if antimatter particles are really identical to matter except for their charge. The milestone was achieved by the Anti-Hydrogen Laser Physics Apparatus Project, an international collaboration based at European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN, in Geneva. For team members like Makoto Fujiwara, a researcher at the University of British Columbia's Triumph Laboratory and the spokesperson for Alpha Canada, the new study is a culmination of decades of imagination and grit. I have been working in this field of antimatter physics for over 20 years, and laser cooling antimatter has been really one of my dreams for a long time, Fujiwara said in the call. When I started, we didn't even know how to make antimatter atoms in large quantities. This was in the late 1990s, so this was completely wishful dreaming at that time. It's really, really exciting. It's beyond words, he added, referring to the new study. It's exciting in two ways. One is that, of course, we have achieved a dream that we set out to do many years ago, but I'm even more excited about the opportunities that this opens up, which he said were unthinkable before. Laser cooling and manipulation of various materials is a decades-old technique that has led to many groundbreaking results, but this is the first instance of its success with antimatter atoms. But before diving into the mechanism and implications of the new experiment, it's worth taking a step back to understand why antimatter has remained such a giant question mark in models of the universe. Antimatter particles are thought to be identical to particles that are made up of regular matter, except they carry the exact opposite charge. The counterpart of an electron in a normal particle is a positron in an antimatter particle. A proton is an antiproton, and so on. Because they are equal but opposite forms of matter, particles and antiparticles spectacularly annihilate each other when they collide, a reaction that creates byproducts that can be detected in laboratories and prove antimatter does exist. According to modern physical theories, the Big Bang should have endowed the universe with equal amounts of particles and antiparticles. The result of such a configuration would cause all these matter-antimatter pairs to destroy each other in an epic cosmic showdown, leaving nothing behind but remnant energy for all time. You may have noticed that in reality, the universe is not just vibing husk of vestigial energy. It is a physical entity in which matter somehow ended up being far more plentiful than antimatter, raising a problem now known as the matter asymmetry problem. To probe this mystery, scientists need to study antimatter in laboratory conditions, but Fujiwara noted that's easier said than done. Because of its combustible relationship with regular matter, it's tricky to make large amounts of this material in our antimatter hostile world. When the first antimatter atoms were generated at CERN during the 1990s, they only existed for a tiny fraction of a second, far too short a period to examine them in detail. By 2011, however, CERN had pioneered a technique that tracked the antihydrogen atoms for a record 1,000 seconds. Fujiwara, who was a co-author of that study, saw this as a breakthrough that could one day make laser cooling of antimatter particles a reality. This advance could dramatically slow down experimental antimatter atoms from speeds of around 3,000 kilometers per hour, 186 miles per hour, which would allow for more precise observations and even manipulate this bizarre entity. Of course, at that time, people kind of laughed at it, Fujiwara said, because it's such a difficult thing to do. Everybody knew. In particular, the laser that was required for antihydrogen cooling is known to be tremendously difficult. So at that time, it was kind of a pipe dream. Despite the intimidating obstacles, Fujiwara was encouraged by a conversation about the topic of the Takamasa Momoso, another UBC physicist with expertise in laser cooling, whom he just happened to bump into at a UBC cafeteria. Momose was optimistic that this specialized instrument could be built, and joined the Alpha collaboration to lead the development of laser. Now, a decade later, the team's hard work has paid off. During that time, Amos and his colleagues fine-tuned the alpha laser to shoot light at just the right frequency to cool antihydrogen atoms to temperatures approaching absolute zero, which in turn decelerates them to speeds of under 50 kilometers per hour, about 31 miles per hour. In this cold and slowed down form, the laser light can actually manipulate the antihydrogen, meaning that the antimatter can be controlled and moved with unprecedented precision, allowing researchers to make new observations of its odd properties and behavior. To that point, the Alpha team plans to continue improving the technique so that they can test out fundamental predictions that antimatter is identical to matter except for its charge. If they find any other deviations in antihydrogen particles, it could hint at the existence of new and mind-boggling physics beyond the well-corroborated standard model. The team also hopes to examine other open mysteries, such as the matter asymmetry problem or antimatter's unknown interaction with gravity, that later line of research that could provide a novel test of the equivalence principle in Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity. These are just a few high-profile examples of possible application of this technique, but given antimatter's essential and puzzling role in our cosmos, any new information about its weird characteristics will be valuable for understanding the very underpinnings of our reality. To that end, Fujiwara and Momos have also founded a new project called Hydrogen Antihydrogen Infrastructure at Canadian universities for quantum innovations in antimatter science, maybe work on that name a little, to push the boundaries of the research further. The long-term goal in our field is really to try to make as precise as possible comparisons of the properties of matter and antimatter. Fujiwara concluded, the properties and the equivalence of matter and antimatter is deeply connected in the foundations of our physical understanding of nature. So that's an interesting story about sciencey things. And took me to some really crazy places in my mind. So that's I feel like that's a big breakthrough for us. Gets us closer to be able to create antimatter on a large scale. Moving on from there, U.S. hunger crisis persists, especially for kids and older adults. Let's read into this. This is a story by the Associated Press, by Anita Snow, Rebecca Santana, and Candace Choi of the Associated Press. Posted on April 1st, 2021, out of Phoenix, Arizona. America is starting to claw its way out of the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic, but food insecurity persists, especially for children and older adults. Food banks around the U.S. continue giving away far more canned, packaged, and fresh provisions than they did before the virus outbreak tossed millions of people out of work, forcing many to seek something to eat for the first time. For those who are now back at work, many are still struggling, paying back rent, or trying to rebuild savings. We have all been through an unimaginable year, said Brian Green, CEO of the Houston Food Bank, the network's largest. It was distributing as much as 1 million pounds of groceries daily at various points during the pandemic last year. Data from Feeding America, a national network of most food banks in the U.S., shows that its members dispensed far more in the last 3 months of 2020, about 42% more compared to the same period in 2019. Katie Fitzgerald, Feeding America's chief operating officer, said she expects the food banks will collectively distribute the equivalent of 6 billion meals this year, about the same amount they gave away last year and far above the 4.2 billion meals given out in 2019. A lot of families who were living paycheck to paycheck before the pandemic were already experiencing food insecurity, she said. Now the level of insecurity for some has grown more extreme. When you see real hunger, mom skipping meals to feed the family, and such, I guess. The number of free meals districts served to children whose families meet income criteria fell sharply. Nationwide, approximately 1.65 billion fewer breakfast lunches were served by child food service programs between March and November of 2020 than were served March to November 2019, decreased 30%. From rural to urban areas, districts have had to get creative to deliver food to kids. In Phoenix, on a recent hazy afternoon, grown-ups and kids lined up by a yellow school bus for bags of free food. The tiniest kids balanced multiple bags they trudged home to apartments nearby, on occasional apple or juice box tumbling onto the asphalt. A young woman stuffed bags of food under her toddler's stroller seat. This has been important because most refugees don't have a ride, said Cynthia Ramet, originally from Pakistan. She was among those picking up bags containing small milk cartons, peanut butters, hamburgers, and pre-cooked meals to be reheated. The Alhambra School District in Phoenix went from serving 6,000 free breakfasts and 9,600 free lunches every day before the pandemic, down to about 2,500 meals overall daily. So that's much lower. As districts reopen, including some with hybrid models, so people are just fucked. So there's more people than ever that need food and less food being given out. As districts reopen, including some with hybrid models where kids don't attend in person every day, schools are trying to ensure their access to food is consistent. The USDA has announced that during summer recess, it will extend flexible food programs, providing free meals to all children across the U.S., regardless of income. Also struggling are older adults, many of whom have turned to food banks, Meals on Wheels home deliveries, and other charities to get enough to eat. Meals on Wheels America said that at the end of 2020, its branches nationwide were still serving an average 60% more seniors than before COVID-19. Over $1.675 billion in emergency funding has gone to nutrition programs under the Older Americans Act to pay for food gas drivers to deliver meals, along with masks, gloves, and sanitizer to protect staff. Jackie Robinson, a 66-year-old retired cook who once worked at a French Quarter restaurant in New Orleans, struggled to get by on his social security benefits before the pandemic. Over the summer, he signed up for a city-run delivery program and now gets 2 meals a day, 7 days a week. Things were getting kind of tough, a little rough, and I needed a little extra assistance, he said. The New Orleans program pays local restaurants to make food that is delivered to people who qualify. It feeds 11,200 people, including 4,000 seniors, and is a partnership between the city and FEMA designed to get food to people at a time when they were being encouraged to stay home. It isn't restricted to older adults, but officials had them in mind when they launched it last summer. New Orleans resident Helen Smith Green, 76, uses the walker to get around and depended on her 96-year-old mother to cook for both of them before the older woman fell and went to an assisted living facility. Green now gets meals through the New Orleans program. Separately, she also gets a monthly food box delivered. I'm very thankful for these meals. It makes a big difference in your life, she said. Makes you think about how different people's lives are. It's fucked. Like, she's 74 and she lives with her 96-year-old mother. And that's probably what her whole life has just been her and her mother together fighting the world. How different that life is to mine is insane. FDA slams real water linked to liver failure, water plant manager MIA. This was an interesting story that I think was important to pass people so they know don't drink the real water. Don't do it. If you have some real water, get rid of it. This is what it looks like. Real as in RE squared AL. Like there's a 2 over the E. Don't ask me why. The Food and Drug Administration, says Beth Moll on April 1st, 2021, for Ars Technica. The Food and Drug Administration on Wednesday admonished Nevada-based company Real Water for being uncooperative in a multi-state health investigation linked to its alkalized water products. The company is accused of poisoning its customers, causing acute liver failure and other serious health problems in adults, children, and pets. On March 16th, the FDA and Southern Nevada Health District announced that they were investigating cases of acute non-viral hepatitis, resulting in acute liver failure, in 5 infants and children, all of whom had consumed the company's alkaline water. The water was the only common link between the 5 children and infants. Since then, customers have filed several lawsuits making similar claims, including 3 Californian women who filed a federal lawsuit in Nevada March 22nd seeking class action status. Wow. In an investigation update Wednesday, the FDA said its work has been hamstrung by Real Water's failure to hand over critical records for 2 of its product facilities. Real Water also failed to notify its distributors of the March 24th recall of its water products, which are still being offered up for sale by online retailers, the FDA noted. In addition, the FDA reported that the company is still promoting its products on social media despite the recall and serious health claims. So seriously, don't drink that real water. Just don't do it. Moving on from there, truck knocks train off tracks in Taiwan, killing at least 48 people. This is the story by Ralph Jennings and Johnson Lai of the Associated Press for April 2nd, 2021. Out of Hualien County, Taiwan. A train collided with an unmanned vehicle that had rolled down a hill Friday in eastern Taiwan, leaving at least 48 people dead and dozens injured in the island's deadliest rail disaster. That's what it looks like. Wow. Passengers climbed out of windows and walked along the roof to reach safety. The train derailed near the Taroka Gorge scenic area on the first day of a long holiday weekend when many people were using Taiwan's extensive rail system. The train had been carrying more than 400 people. Images from the scene showed train cars wedged against the walls of the tunnel. Part of the wall of one car had smashed into a seat. Many people were crushed under train seats in the collision, and there were other people on top of the seats. So those at the bottom were pressed and crushed and lost consciousness, a passenger with gauze taped to her elbow told Taiwanese broadcaster EBC, which did not show her face or give her name. At the beginning, they still responded when we called them, but I guess they lost consciousness afterwards. The National Fire Service confirmed the death toll, which included the train's young, newly married driver, and said all aboard had now been accounted for. More than 100 people were injured, it said. Railways news officer Wang Hui-ping called the crash Taiwan's deadliest rail disaster. And you probably didn't even hear about that. Isn't that insane? And a little more information about that there if you want to read it. I'm going to move on. 2. Traffic jam eases further in Suez Canal after ship unblocked. So progress is being made on that front, which is good. This is another story by the Associated Press on April 2nd, 2021 out of Cairo. The traffic congestion caused by a cargo ship that blocked the Suez Canal for nearly a week continued to ease on Friday, with the number of ships waiting to transit falling to 206. Canal Services firm Leth Agencies said from over 300 3 days ago, and that's from more than 420 at the time when it was halted. Okay, let me just keep reading. On Monday, salvage teams freed the skyscraper-sized container ship, ending a crisis that had clogged one of the world's most vital waterways and halted billions of dollars a day in maritime commerce. At the time, canal officials said that more than 420 ships had been waiting for the Panama-flagged Japanese-owned ship Ever Given to be freed so they could make the crossing. So it started at 420, then said
Then Left Agencies has said that a total of 257 vessels have crossed the canal since the ship was refloated by a flotilla of tugboats helped by the tides. So it was 420 ships waiting. 357 have passed through now, which presumably means that some of the ships waiting have been waiting still the whole time. That's just under 100 are still, waiting since the ship blocked the canal. But we're getting there. It's almost everyone, and now we're down in total to 206, I guess. Waiting in total. So we're getting there. Things are catching up, slowly but surely. Moving on from there. Officials say that elementary teacher assisted sex. I don't know what has to do with officials. This is a story by the Associated Press, April 2nd, 2021. Elementary teacher solicited sex with a 2-year-old. I don't quite understand how this works. Let's try to find out. A Florida elementary school teacher is facing charges alleging he solicited online to have sex with a 2-year-old and traveled to meet the child. I'm assuming it wasn't the 2-year-old that was at the keyboard. Is it like, are we talking like the parents tried to work with this person for him to come and have sex with their 2-year-old? Or are we talking like a sex trafficking thing? Either way, this is horrifying. The problem, thankfully, nothing of it actually happened, I don't think. So thank God for that. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office said in a news release that Xavier Dante Alexander, 28, was arrested Thursday on felony charges of soliciting sex with a minor and traveling to meet a minor for sex. Alexander is a 2-year-old minor, nonetheless. What the fuck? Alexander is a 4th grade teacher at Grove Park Elementary School, because of course he is, in Palm Beach Gardens, and is also advertised as a babysitter on various websites. The sheriff's office did not release further information about the allegations. It customarily waits for the county court clerk to post the arresting deputy's report online, which happens after the defendant's initial court appearance. Alexander, who was being held without bond, was scheduled to appear later Friday. The Palm Beach County School District issued a statement saying it is shocked and appalled by the accusations and that it is cooperating with law enforcement. The district said Alexander has been suspended pending the outcome of the investigation and that none of Alexander's alleged crimes occurred at school and that it notified parents. It said that the families are being offered support services. If convicted of both charges, Alexander could get 20 years in prison. Court records do not show if he has an attorney. Fuck that guy. Like, what the fuck? How? Why? Huh? Ugh. Moving on from there, Republicans trod well-worn path to court to sue Biden. Wonderful. This is a story by Mark Sherman of the Associated Press, posted on April 2nd, 2021, out of Washington. These are busy days for Republican state attorneys general, filing repeated lawsuits that claim President Joe Biden and his administration are overstepping their authority on immigration, climate change, the environment, and taxes. Because how dare they try to fix those things, is basically what they're saying. Most of the action is in federal courts, where former President Donald Trump was able to appoint conservative judges. The strategy harkens back to what Democrats did during Trump's presidency, heading to court in New York, California, Maryland, and other states where they were likely to receive a friendly reception. Even before that, Republicans were frequent filers during Barack Obama's White House years. This is something the Republicans have taken from the Democratic playbook, just as Democrats had taken a lot of things from the Republican playbook during Trump's tenure. The New York University law professor Sally Katzen, who served in the Clinton White House administration, the legal action reflects GOP opposition to Biden initiatives, but it also is providing the attorneys general, many with higher political ambitions, to showcase their willingness to stand up to Biden and unabashedly side with Trump. Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, seeking the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in 2022, brags in a TV ad that he is on the conservative front line suing to stop the Biden administration's worst abuses, like trying to solve climate change or immigration or the environment. The main target of lawsuits filed so far have been executive orders issued by Biden, but several states also have sued over a provision of the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 rescue plan that prohibits states from using their share of federal money to reduce taxes. Chris Carr, the Georgia Attorney General and new chairman of the Republican Attorneys General Association, said that he and his colleagues have been cast in this role because Democrats control both houses of Congress and the White House. We've got a situation where President Biden says, Look, Jim, I want to be more partisan in nature, But then he turns around and has issued more executive orders in the beginning of a term than any president in modern history, I'm told, Carr said. Which is a lie, because didn't Trump issue more? Maybe not. What do I know? Our job is to ensure the rule of law is upheld. It's a natural tension we've seen throughout American history. How does the federal government stay in its lane? It took only 2 days after Biden's inauguration for the first legal fight to erupt. Following the president's announcement of a 100-day pause in deportations, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton went to court and won a court order against the halt. So they are allowed to continue deporting people in Texas, apparently. Several other states have since followed with similar claims. Just since the middle of March, we have had in Texas, Montana, and 19 other states filed suits in Texas to overturn Biden's cancellation of the contentious Keystone XL oil pipeline from Canada. So states are trying to, well, interesting. Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry led 13 states in suing the administration to end a suspension of new oil and gas leases in federal land and water to reschedule canceled sales of leases in the Gulf of Mexico, Alaska waters, and western states. Wonderful. 13 states jumped on that. That's insane. And then also Missouri sued over the restriction on state tax cuts as a condition of receiving money from the huge COVID-19 bill. Earlier in March, Schmidt led 12 states in a suit that claims the administration lacks the authority to take account of the social cost of climate change. Lacks the authority to take account of the social cost of climate change. The president said on January 20th that federal agencies must account for damages caused by increased greenhouse gas emissions, including changes in farm productivity, human health, and property damage with increased flood risk. See, Republicans are literally trying to destroy the country every chance they can, in any way they can. It's insane. In at least 2 instances, Republicans are trying to get the Supreme Court involved to keep in place Trump policies that Biden is reviewing or has indicated he will reverse. Paxton is leading a push to get the justice to reimpose the Trump-era immigration rule denying green cards to immigrants who use public benefits like food stamps. It's disgusting. A federal court has blocked the policy nationwide, and Biden administration dropped the defense of it. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost is leading a 19-state effort. What is with all these states jumping in on this? To keep the court from dismissing a case over the Trump policy that bans family planning programs that receive federal funds from referring women for abortions. The administration and medical groups that had challenged the policy agreed to dismiss the case because the Health and Human Services Department shortly will propose a new rule rescinding the ban on abortion referrals. Paxton's predecessor was Greg Abbott, now the Texas governor. Abbott burnished his consecutive credentials by frequently going to court over Obama initiatives. I go into office, I sue the federal government, and I go home, he said in 2013, boasting then of having sued the administration 25 times, and somehow people still like this guy. By the middle of 2016, the Wall Street Journal counted at least 44 times that Texas went to court against the Obama administration. The one thing that has changed since the last Democratic administration is that Trump was able to move appeals courts across the country to the right, adding six judges each to appeals courts that hear cases from Ohio and Texas, and 4 to the court that includes Missouri. All 3 already leaned conservative. Even the famously liberal 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco, which hears appeals for Montana, became more evenly balanced in the past 4 years with the addition of 10 Trump appointees. Republican attorneys general might take extra comfort from the fact that there were a significant number of conservative judges confirmed during the Trump administration, and there are a number of courts of appeals where the balance was tipped, so it's an even better shot than before, Katzen said. And the final story. DC's New Gods movie and Aquaman spinoff, The Trench, cancelled by WB. I think this is important because it kind of screams to me that, again, WB is ignoring the Snyderverse and people who want the Snyderverse, and they want nothing to do with the Snyderverse. Because Ava DuVernay's New Gods would have featured Darkseid rather prominently, and now it's just gone bye-bye. So that's interesting. That said, there are other stories about DC pursuing a multiverse that kind of makes it sound like the Snyderverse is possible. Many that Batman in the new Batman movie, the Robert Pattinson Batman, apparently exists on Earth 2, so might not be completely... it does not make it impossible for there to be future movies of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck could just be the Earth 1 Batman, whereas Robert Pattinson is Earth 2 Batman. Is what I guess they're trying to say. We shall see how that goes. Interesting. Moving on from there, Geekly blog, not much to write about in the blog this week, besides how much I love Godzilla vs. Kong. I wrote ahead on this month's writing, which took the first couple days of the week, which is probably why I don't have much to talk about. And I think I'm going to try to stay a week ahead just so you never have to worry about me not hitting my Sunday deadline. So there will always be writing on Sundays from now on. I've been doing the Geekly Weekly on Friday mornings instead of releasing the written blog the night. Instead of releasing the weekly blog the night before, I've been reading the news in the mornings like an old man reads a paper, so it just seemed to make more sense. Sorry again to the people of the podcast who have probably noticed that there is no longer much of a backlog. I had to get rid of it because it was costing too much money, and I'm poor as heck, and I don't really get any support anyway from anyone, so it doesn't matter. As far as I know, people don't care. My numbers are bad as usual. Like no comments as per usual. If there's people out there reading this, I wouldn't know. No one ever engages with my stuff in any way that I can tell. My name is Andrew Geczy, and my brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geek.ca. I'm a writer writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly segments, a teaser and 3 acts on Sundays on my Patreon page. Every month it's a different book over a range of genres, and they sometimes even cross over and connect. At the end of the month, the finished chapter is added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. If you click the thing, it brings you to that, and that's cool. There's a dark fantasy story about a post-apocalyptic world where powerful royals rule and enslave the remaining people struggling to survive on the last remaining land mass. There's also a sci-fi story about people on a dying world who have built a ship to a new one, but their project is almost brought down by a terrorist organization within their own ranks. Finally, there's a crossover story where characters from my other books are brought into the distant future where the princess of a far advanced civilization. One sec. Oh, man. Finally, there's a crossover story where characters from my other books are brought into the distant future, where the princess of a far advanced civilization, one that lives in a solar system-sized megastructure around a Dyson Sphere, needs help defeating her twisted, power-hungry brother. And all of these stories will be outside the paywall for all to enjoy as new episodes released weekly, and the finished chapters will be attached at the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format, readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones at the end of the month. But that's not all my stories. There's also urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal phenomena, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East. And there's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world. All these stories are published and available on Amazon and are also safe and sound behind the paywall in PDF format, attached to an archive at the top of my Patreon page. It's only viewable by subscribers, so if you don't see it, that's just because you're not subscribing. If you subscribed, it would be right there at the top. It's my entire library of work, thousands of pages worth, easily accessible to every subscriber at any level. There's even a Geekly Weekly blog which covers all the news you may have missed over the week, as well as ranks a week's worth of television, and makes predictions on what new pop culture things might be in the public consciousness for the next week. Finally, I do video game streams, both multiplayer matchmaking as well as single-player campaign playthroughs. You can see me play games like Final Fantasy, Call of Duty, Hitman, and more. And you can see it all in one place. So stay tuned and maybe subscribe. It's only $1, and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month and you can name a character or location or suggest a thing you might want to see. Basically, you get to give a noun, and then I promise to incorporate that noun into one of my stories somehow. Maybe not the same month you give a suggestion, but within 3 months guaranteed. No matter how crazy, you can't sabotage me, I promise. Think of it like a fun improv game, and you can keep giving nouns for every month you pay at the $5 tier. Or if you give $10, you don't get 2 nouns, but you can give a description to go with your noun. Describe the personality of your character, or the look of your location, or the importance of your item. For $10, you get a noun and a description. You can also just give $1 towards supporting my efforts at video game streaming or my weekly blog if that's more where your interests lie. So if you're listening to this right now and you want to see this continue, because let me tell you something, it's probably not going to continue. If I have to go back to working minimum wage nights, the first thing I'm cutting out of my routine is the Geekly Weekly. I'm sorry, but it's true. I'll still write my weekly 8 pages or whatever, but god damn it, that's it. You know, if I can't make something from this and get me out of this hell I live in, this minimum wage hell that I've been living in my entire life, if I can't use this to somehow get my way out, with or without your help, then I'm definitely, that will be the like, duh, because that's I'm tired of it, and I'm tired of all the work I'm putting in and getting nothing out of it, and I'm tired of working minimum wage and suffering and starving and not being able to afford things like medicine I need or proper foods or be able to go to the dentist to fix a thing in my tooth or to or the fact that I think I have diabetes but I can't afford diabetes medication or even to see a doctor about it. Who the fuck has time for that? Or a doctor these days. I feel so frustrated. There's so much more that I want from my life that I can't have because I'm living in poverty. And it goes back to what I was talking about really about people wanting stuff because society tells them they should. And like the society tells me that I should be more than this, that I should have the things that those other two guys were seeking that and then they suffered because of it. Now I am suffering because of it. Because I don't want to take those easy steps, those easy paths that can lead to suffering because I'm not going to put myself out there in that way. I'm going to do things my way. And because of that, I don't know if I'll ever be able to make it. That scares the shit out of me. I am honestly so scared. I'm tired of it all. I'm as poor as it gets, living paycheck to paycheck and sometimes starving, so I understand if you are too. I don't want to take food out of your mouths. Your attention is enough. Say something, comment here, or at the very least, follow me on Twitter at Andrew Geczy or Instagram at WingCommander4. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Long live Marcy, the Vampire Queen. We are the 99% Greek. Greek? We are the 99% Greek. 99% of us are Greek, all right? So if you're not Greek, you're in the minority. That's not what I meant to say. But seriously, if you don't have money, at least follow me on Twitter. That would mean the world to me. The more people I have on Twitter, the more people will find me on Twitter. That's just how it works. It's like with Amazon books. The more people who read my book, the more it will show up in search things, and more people will see the book to read it. So it's like a self-perpetuating thing. If you show your support, then more people will be encouraged to show their support. So please, I beg of you, if you're out there, please, even if you don't have money, and if you can even give $1, the dollar would mean the world to me because $1 you give will encourage other people to give $1. Like $1 could lead to $5, $10 for me, like just by showing your support. So, and if you don't have that, just show your support by engaging somehow with me and my stuff. I beg of you, because I need it. I need to see advancement. I need to see progression. I need to see that this is something and not just me wasting my time. Thank you. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. We are the 99% Geek.